Next, Authentically Detroit welcomes co-chair of the Association of African American Museums, Stephanie Wright Griggs, and Brian Taylor Sullivan, one of the stars of The Mountaintop by Katori Hall and directed by Brian Marable at the Detroit Public Theater. But first, this week's hot takes from the Michigan Chronicle. Adam Ollier is dropping his Secretary of State bid to launch an East Side State Senate campaign. There's already some candidates in that race. Keep it locked. Authentically Detroit starts after these messages.
Eastside Community Network is proud to support Rise Higher Detroit, a transition guided by community, built on collaboration. Mayor Sheffield wants to hear from Detroiters, and your input in this citywide survey will help shape what comes next. Stop by ECN and ask for Juanita to complete the survey in person, or take the survey today by visiting our website at ecn-detroit.org. Winter classes have started at the Stoudemire Wellness Hub. From chair yoga and strength-based fitness to nutrition, cooking, and wellness-focused classes, there's something for every person and every starting point. At the Stoudemire, our hope is to offer movement, nourishment, and community to support you throughout the cold season. Learn more at ecn-detroit.org/classes or give us a call at 313-571-2800.
What's up, Detroit? Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit. Broadcasting live today from my living room, I'm Sam Robinson.
And I'm Donna Davidson.
Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people in the city of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on all platforms. We're here today with the co-chair of the Association of African American Museums, Stephanie Wright Griggs, and Brian Taylor Sullivan, one of the stars of The Mountaintop by Katori Hall, directed by Brian Marable at the Detroit Public Theater. Stephanie and Brian, welcome to Authentically Detroit. How are you guys feeling today?
Good. Really good.
I'm feeling good. I do have to make a little correction, though. I am co-chair of the history project of the Association of African American Museums, not of the Association of African American Museums. I don't want them coming after me.
Well, thank you for that correction.
Yeah, I'm a project director, not of the whole group, you know.
And she is also daughter to Dr. Wright. So yes. Charles H. Wright's daughter. So she definitely has history in her blood. And I can't wait to talk to you about that because, you know, I know you because of my husband and I hear so much about you, Stephanie. Can't wait to have that conversation.
Well, I'm looking forward to, too. You have a dynamic husband who I will say whenever I get the chance is largely responsible for the success of the Charles H. Wright Museum. Know that. When you meet Kevin Davidson, you meet the oldest employee at the museum.
Wow. All right. It's time for Hot Takes, where we run down some of this week's top headlines in the city of Detroit. This week, we're talking about Adam Ollier. He dropped out of his Secretary of State bid to launch an East Side State Senate campaign. It's the third state Senate district, the East Side. The lawmaker told Michigan Chronicle last week he feels like he's the most experienced. He knows that he probably will have the most money and resources of any candidate running to represent the district that covers Detroit's East Side, Highland Park, and into Oakland County. This is a redrawn third state Senate district. Adam Ollier in September of last year ended his congressional district run. He wanted to challenge Shri Tanadar. He joined Black candidates Deputy Secretary of State Agogo Adebeye and Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist as Democratic primary candidates before he dropped out last week. Adebeye exited the race last month, saying he expected Gilchrist to become the nominee. Ollier was endorsed by Warren Evans when he wanted to take on Shri again in 24. Failed to turn in enough valid signatures to make the ballot, and there was some disappointment among Detroit's Black establishment who are upset with Tanadar They were really upset with Adam when he wasn't even able to make the ballot. The conversation in D.C. was that, this guy's political career is over. Of course, we knew here in Detroit that it was not. Adam is a young guy in his 40s. He's got a lot of time to run for many other offices. However, there is a number of other candidates. Donna, I know that you were supporting Ebony Taylor at her launch event last week. John Conyers III is also running. And Ebony is also endorsed by Stephanie Chang. She currently sits in the seat that partially represents that new district. But Donna, I'm curious to hear what you heard from Ebony at her launch party.
I teach on Wednesdays. And so I had to go first because I had to rush out and go teach. I'll come back to the office to teach. But Stephanie Chang was there, Letitia Johnson was there, Denzel McCampbell, Gabrielle Santiago Romero was there, and many other people who I think have a lot of stature in the district. Stephanie has been endorsed by the Working Families Party. She's got some union endorsements. Ebony has been in this community, grounded in this community. In all honesty, she's on our board. So I've known her since I've been at this organization. And I really will always lend my support. And this is what I said in my comments. If you want to know what somebody is going to do, look at what they've done. Okay, she has been a servant leader in this community, rolling up her sleeves with Mothering Justice. She's worked with Higher Heights, helping to organize support for women candidates across the nation. She's a beautiful person, a mother, a wife, a volunteer in the community, and she was asked to run for the office. I can promise you that she did not do it because of pursuing any kind of ego thing. She was asked by people in this community to represent them. And so it's unfortunate that in the race to try to figure out who I'm going to run for, Adam Olier ended up in the seat of a friend, running for the seat of a friend who he went to elementary school with, because it certainly was very hurtful to her to have him do that. I think, the question for me is, I know you want to be something, but you're all over the place, okay? You went from Secretary of State, which I think is a really unusual kind of decision for somebody to run for Secretary of State when they have falsified petitions that they submitted to the Secretary of State and got called out. Now you want to run for Secretary of State. You probably want to demonstrate for voters. So I don't know. I know that you say that it's clear his candidacy or his political life is not dead. I don't know that it's dead. But I do know, and I said this to him, I've said this to John Conyers, anybody else running for office, when you want to run and you want my support, I need to see your service first. And then come up and let me know what you want to do. Because if I see what you've done, I have a better understanding that you have something to offer our community, which is in need of really great representation. I'm going to just say this final thing. Stephanie Chang is one of the greatest senators in the state of Michigan. I absolutely love Stephanie. I have so much respect for her. When it comes to water shutoff, Stephanie is there proposing legislation in the state. When it comes to evictions, when it comes to property taxes, when it comes to police violence, Stephanie shows up every single time. She writes more bills than just about anybody I've ever seen. And so to have a representative be so effective, show up every time. I've watched her daughters grow up because she comes to all of our community events and makes sure that she keeps her fingers on the pulse of this community. We need a representative like her to replace her.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to be paying attention to that race. Donna, of course, today you also had Abe Ayash announce formally that he's going to be running in that first state Senate district. Of course, Justin Owenu is a candidate in that race as well. And I should also say Katori Hall is a candidate in that third state Senate district as well. And so getting all of that out of the way, I mean, the conversation that I had last week and even today at this luncheon with Governor Whitmer, Garland Gilchrist comes in about half an hour into the event. And so we get to talk to him sort of off, away from Whitmer. And, the conversations around Black candidates in Michigan and how the Democratic Party supports the certain types of Black candidates. Of course, last week we saw in the 35th district, Donna, that is where my parents live, Midland Bay City, Saginaw. We saw the conversation be around this establishment-backed candidate, Chedrick Green is his name. He's a fire captain versus Pam Pugh, who people view as the grassroots, more leftist, progressive candidate there. Chedrick beat Pugh pretty handily. He had like double the campaign cash. So in an area like that where people are pretty tuned out already to these sort of races, and so a special election, you're completely tuned out. The candidate with the most money is probably going to win.
In this special election, actually normal special election, that seat sat vacant for a minute.
It did, and people criticized the governor for it on both sides of the aisle.
I mean, she had the sole authority to call for an election in that district. And it kind of it's disturbing only because I so strongly believe in representative government, and to have my own voting rights diminished through emergency management. I hate to see political calculus determining when people get to have representation. The people, your parents, have the right to representation. I'm glad they're going to have it. The actual elections in May, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
the general
year to have represent. Yeah, and there's so many reasons why that's important. For example, if you are running an organization or doing things in the community, and you're trying to get a grant from the state, a congressional, or a state-directed grant from your representative, and you don't have one, it makes that much harder to even access some of the resources that that communities need and deserve. So I'm glad to know there's going to be somebody. All of my friends, a lot of my friends were supporting Pam Pugh. I was invited to a fundraiser for hers a couple weeks ago and didn't make it. So, I think the issue is getting out there early, doing the grassroots work, and everybody's not going to make it, but we've seen a definite movement towards the left in our state politics. Actually, across the nation, you're seeing more grassroots progressives winning campaigns, and unfortunately, she did not. I don't really know much about her opponent.
Sure. He is a fire captain. We've had a lot of good fire captain candidates. One, James Harris, he ran as a fire captain. He did not come close to beating Mary nor Coleman Young. However, a lot of people were excited about his campaign. We're going to see how this guy, I think the Republican candidate up there, beat a former Dow Chemical director or some sort of leader. I think he's a sort of a grassroots. The Republicans did actually get the more less establishment candidate in that race. So how about we take a break and then we come on back and we talk to Brian and Stephanie all about, well, I really want to hear about this play and Stephanie, of course, the work that you're doing. We're going to take a break and we will see you guys on the other side. For us, that means we just sit here until we go back on. Okay. All right. Welcome back, everyone. Healthcare administration and African American history are the paths by which Stephanie has given a lifetime of public service. Her passion for both runs deep. She organically entered the path of preserving African American history in childhood as her father funded Detroit's Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. Stephanie's passion for the preservation of African American history extends well beyond Detroit. Currently, she's working with the Association of African American Museums as the co-chair of the 50th Anniversary Project and a member of the Burroughs Wright Scholarship Selection Committee. Brian Sullivan Taylor, an actor, director, acting coach from Southfield, Michigan. He has experience across film, television, theater, commercial, print, and voiceover. Brian, you are the founder of the award-winning Detroit Drama Studio, where he trains actors using the Ivana Chubbuck Technique. I want to hear more about that. Brian made his professional acting debut in 2017 in Detroit Public Theater's award-nominated production of Dominique Morisseau's Skeleton Crew. His theater credits include 67, Sunset Baby, Jesus Hopped the A Train, the world premiere of Into the Side of a Hill at Flint Repertory Theater, and the Michigan premiere of Halftime with Don at Tipping Point Theater. On screen, Brian can be seen on Amazon Prime's H Block, McGraw Ave as Detective Harvey. I went back and watched some of those clips before doing that. He made his directorial debut in 2023 at Tipping Point Theater with their award-winning production of Driving Miss Daisy. Brian is honored to portray Dr. Martin Luther King in the Mountaintop. Brian, let's start with you in the Mountaintop. Donna, you saw it over the weekend. Yeah. I did not. It is running, you said, through March?
Until March 8th. It closes March 8th, Sunday, March 8th.
Yeah, so listen. I went there and I knew it was a play about Dr. Martin Luther King, but this is a Dr. King I've never seen before. Mm-hmm. Talk about the role and what you were seeking to portray in Dr. King.
Well, I'll start by saying this role is definitely the heaviest lift that I've ever had to do, because it's a blend of his actual life and, things that did occur in this fictionalized setting. I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and I'm telling my age, I'm almost 20 years in, but I've had the opportunity over the years to go to conventions and things and meet brothers who actually knew him. It's kind of in the way that you see him in the play. So years, it's been years of me getting this information before I was even, before I even got him, he put this in my hands to do this role. So it has its challenges, but it's fun because, we've always seen Dr. King, for lack of better words, as a superhero. And we just assume that all of our heroes are just otherworldly and they have powers that we don't. Where in actuality, he really was just a man. There's a part in the play, and I'm not giving it away, but just where I'm saying I'm just a man. I'm just a man. Like, despite what the world may see me as, at the root of it, I am just a man. And it's been such an exploration for me, just exploring him as the man versus the symbol. And I'm still discovering things. Like when you see it, Sam, whenever you see it, if you see it March 8th, the show that Donna saw will be totally different because I have so many more discoveries. It's been a great experience.
It was, but you played a strong figure, and I saw these moments in time, without giving away the play, where you were moving into that charismatic leader role, but that was very little of what you did.
Yeah.
And so, I wonder about that. In his interpersonal life and in talking to people, was Dr. King a charismatic person, or was he just a dude who knew how to put it on stage and then went back and he was just another brother, in the room?
I think he was definitely a brother in the room, but I also, what I learned in my research. So I'm gonna go to church with you for a second. So my barber, he's Kojic, and he always laughs and jokes with me like, "You Baptist," because I'm Baptist. He's like, "You Baptists always do something on Sunday, then do another thing on Monday." And Martin Luther King was a Baptist preacher, and and he had his trials and tribulations, but what made him special was his command of language and how he was able to use his charisma and his intelligence and his command of language to get people to see his vision and his dreams. And behind closed doors, that didn't too much change. It was just in public, we got the symbol and his friends, Ralph, Jesse, and everybody around him. And, obviously Coretta, she got to see the flawed version of himself. The relaxed, stressed, insecure version of himself. And I think he knew that just where he was at the time and being in the public eye and what his symbolism meant to all of us and the rest of the world, that he had to be Martin Luther King Jr., whereas back at home, he could be Michael. Oh, I'm not giving away too much. Sorry, y'all.
You did it. You did it. But that's okay. You won't get it, though, right? But it was amazing to learn those types of things. And it made me think about how invisible the other people in his life were. He was a big personality, but when you saw the side of him that you portrayed, you just wanted to go hug Coretta, and the kids. Yeah. Oh, my God. And I was like, oh, if I was his daughter, I'd be like, no, don't show my daddy like that. You know how we are about our daddy, right? No, don't show that. How is the family? Has the family seen this play?
I'm not sure. I have to assume so because the play was originally produced in 2009, and Samuel L. Jackson and Angela Bassett did the original version in New York. So I don't have actual 100% evidence that they've seen it, but I'm pretty sure they have to be familiar with it because his daughter she's a huge activist as well. So I just have to assume that they've seen it, and in almost 20 years of it being running.
Yeah. Okay. And just one more question about that. It was written by Katori Hall.
Yes.
And Katori Hall is a household name for another piece of work. You want to talk about that?
So it was so funny because I didn't put two and two together, but we were probably like a week into rehearsal because Katori Hall is also the writer and executive producer of another hot show called P-Valley on Starz. And my wife, she used to watch the show all the time. She kind of fell off, but when we were in the rehearsal room, and I'm familiar with Katori Hall, her name, but it just wasn't registering to me. And when I started reading the script, and one day our director was like, "Yeah, Katori, she does P-Valley." I was like, "Wow," because these are two different pieces, but it just shows her artistic range that she can do a show like that and write this well-crafted play about Martin Luther King.
I saw some connections. I'll be honest with you. I think that what she's able to do is she's able to lift up human beings who are overlooked and give them agency and give them face and make them sympathetic and connect. And so, and with a special focus on, certain groups of people, certainly Black people who are everyday blue collar folks, not your special folks. And so what I saw, without giving away the play, was this connection between this great man and this woman who was very, very ordinary. Yes. I read about the book. I expected to see Ralph Abernathy. I was waiting for Jesse. He had blood on his shirt. I was ready for everything but what I saw. It was, this, because you don't think of the king.
Yeah.
With the people who are not, in his realm. So that was a shift. But there was a lot of humorous moments.
Yes.
Can I say that you guys are smoking?
Yes, that's fine. You can say
people
need to know that in advance.
Yes, they have to tell people, listen. And it felt very realistic. I'm just going to say those are herbal cigarettes.
Oh, yes, those were herbal cigarettes because I am not a smoker at all. And I look, my nose is stuffy now. Getting used to that smoke, but yes, it's all herbal, all natural. I don't know whether you're acting or not, but those herbs smell like tobacco. I was like, wow, this is very realistic.
And the set, oh my goodness, that set was amazing. I've been to the Detroit Public Theater in the old building.
Yes.
This is a brand new space, isn't it?
Yes. It's about 3 years old, but what they're able to do now, with all the stuff you saw, I'm not giving it away because y'all need to come see it.
Yes.
It's an amazing experience. It just completely immerses you even more as an actor, where you can really just zone out and be in the moment.
All right. So you are a Detroiter.
Yeah, listen. Okay. I'm a Metro Detroiter. My friends always tease me because, I'm from Southfield and all my friends are from Detroit. So they're like, you're from Southfield. Don't get up here lying like you're from Detroit. But I'm like, isn't it all the same?
Are you Lathrop or High?
Lathrop.
So were you there when our current mayor was at Lathrop?
Oh, current mayor?
Uh-huh.
Oh, Mary. I'm sorry. Funny enough, Mary's I think she's a year older than I, and I was in high school with her, and I was in the same year with Kyra Harris Bolden, our Supreme Court Justice. So I was in school with both of them at the same time. So
Lathrop folks are trying to give Cass Tech a run for his money.
Oh, yes.
They're coming for y'all.
You got any stories that you'd like to share for us? Either one of those folks. I mean, Well,
I have a story about Kyra. So Kyra has always been on this track. Like, we weren't surprised when she ran and got elected. We weren't surprised at all. When we were in 9th grade, we had an honor civics class together. And our teacher, Mr. Menadeo, every single Tuesday, he would require us to bring in articles from the news, and then we'd have to debate them. And it came to a time where me and Kyra were like the two debate leads in class. And I was a really huge wrestling fan at the time. I had this big WWF title belt. And I told Kyra, I said, I challenge you to take my belt because I just really didn't think she could do it. To this day, when I see Kyra, she'll probably come to the show. I always joke like I've never seen my belt since because we battled. She won it, and she's always been like an advocate and like a legal. It makes sense that she is who she is today. Yeah, I wish I could get my belt back. Maybe she'll see the show.
That's a fantastic story. I'm glad I asked you that because that's really a great story.
All right. So, Sam, do you have more questions? Any questions?
Yeah, I want to ask Brian. People see you on TV. I looked you up and I go through your IMDb, but I see people to chatter on social media, and your family and friends proud when they get to see you. For people who want to get into acting, young people, where do you start? Where did you start? At what point did you realize that it was going to be possible to do what you do now?
The very first place I started was I had to give the utmost credit to my band teacher in middle school, Randy Scott. He's like an award-winning saxophonist. Yeah. You know Randy Scott?
Randy Scott. My three children had Randy Scott at Bernie. So I know to elementary school. You may have known my daughter, but that's another story. Go on.
So Mr. Scott, every band concert, he would always require kids to get up and speak, to introduce different sections. And he let me do it once, and I just ran away with it. And it got to a point where he was like, I'm not even giving you a script. Just go up there and talk, Brian. He was like, people love you when you go, just do it. And he gave me the inspiration and courage to talk in front of crowds and just to be me. And from there, in high school, I joined the Mosaic Youth Theater of Detroit under Rick Sperling and Kate Peckham and Jasmine Rivera. And they molded me and taught me what it was to be a professional actor. Mosaic is it's not the normal youth kid theater. They train you like professional actors. And from there, years passed. I had the opportunity to connect with one of the world's greatest acting coaches, Ivana Chubbuck. She is actually responsible for Halle Berry's Oscar and Charlize Theron's Oscar. And she happens to be from Detroit. And I went to LA for a couple of months, trained with her, got certified. She whooped on me and whipped me into shape. Actually, coming into this audition for this role, I worked with Ivana and her daughter for 2 months to prep. And Ivana was like, you're going to get this role. And I was like, well, Ivana, I don't know. She was like, you're going to get it because we're working and you're going to get it. And I would tell anybody, any young actor or any young artist in general, whatever the art is, dance, painting, whatever instrument, you have to train. I see a lot of people just jumping out, just trying stuff because mama told them, baby, you're going to be a star. But with anything, you have to work at getting better. And I will always say, find a coach in whatever it is you do. Find the resources that can help you get better. I coach actors. I'm an adjunct faculty at the College for Creative Studies where I teach Ivana Chubbuck Technique, and I still get coached. I still get trained. So that's what I would say. Find somebody who can train you.
It's so interesting that you mentioned both Randy and Rick Sperling. So Randy was everybody's favorite teacher, I think, at Bernie Middle School. He was phenomenal and still is. My son was in his jazz band. He got to open up, I think, for Earl Clue or something like that.
Oh, wow.
He did so many wonderful things. I have nothing but love for him. But Rick Sperling is actually now working with a lady named Nafisa Simonet, and they formed the Detroit Excellence Youth Arts Organization to try to ensure that more young people have arts in their schools. And so you are such an example of how arts in school can change lives.
Yes, it definitely changed mine.
Stephanie, go ahead.
A historical note. My father was in Selma during the march across the Pettus Bridge, and he was down there working the first aid station. And while he was in this first aid station, he was part of a chain of communication that had to get to Dr. King that they should not come all the way across the Pettus Bridge because the state troopers were going to shut them off on the bridge and attack them.
Oh, wow.
And he actually had a conversation with Dr. King right after that to see, how he felt and whether or not he had gotten the message clearly. And he said he had. So that's just a little aside.
Stephanie,
in a major life.
Yes.
Wasn't that the impetus for him coming back and creating the museum, that march?
No.
It was not. Okay.
He started the museum He probably started the museum actually as a little boy growing up in Dothan because he saw all the trauma. He saw the drama. But he had decided at the age of 6, when my grandmother said, well, why don't you become a doctor? They're well respected. He felt that was a good idea and set on that path. But he had some pretty traumatic experiences as a little boy. One that wasn't so traumatic, but you remember always, is they wouldn't give him a library card. And they told him he could come after hours. And he said, no, I'm not going to do that. So he found another way to, get books and read. He went to Alabama State. Alabama State had never had anyone go to Meharry Medical College, ever, in the history of the school. And he knew he had to be really prepared. So he took courses and classes on the side. And he got into got into Meharry, and he graduated 6th in his class. In terms of, that whole moving forward. But while he was at Meharry, this shows you the rebel warrior side of him. He would leave medical school and go work on the local politician's campaign. A guy in Tennessee was one of the first people, I think, that run for city council. And I thought, and they were getting upset with him. He said he would still do it, and he graduated 6th in his class.
Wow.
Yeah, but the museum itself was incorporated, though, right after that march in 1965. Yes. So there's Kevin had it in his mind that somehow that march inspired him. But you're saying his inspiration was really in childhood. You said he grew up in Tulsa?
Dothan.
Where's that?
Dothan, Alabama.
Okay, Alabama.
And to fast forward to what really inspired him, he was sent to Africa twice on health survey program. He went to Dahomey, he went to Sierra Leone, he went to Nigeria, and he went to Liberia. And as part of that trip, he would visit really in the interior of these countries. He wasn't staying in the large cities because they wanted feedback. He and another Black doctor were sent, and they wanted feedback on the actual status of health out in the really remote areas. And what struck him was, he said when he walked into these villages, the first thing he would see or be greeted with was a griot telling him the history of their town. Now, this is way out in the bush, guys, in the 60s, coming up to this stranger doing this. And then they would take him to this. They said in each town they had a small area that showed artifacts and told the story of the history of that village. That's what triggered. Because he said, if I can find this in the most rural part of Africa, what are we not doing in the United States to uplift us and our children? That was part of the really front-faced motivation to come back and say, I am going to make a difference in this country by starting a museum of African American history, because I believe children should not only be physically healthy, but mentally healthy, and have the knowledge of history that'll cause them to really appreciate and withstand some of the trauma that affects us.
So, question, when the museum started, where did it start?
Oh, it started in our old home on the boulevard. We used to live there, and he converted the house into the first museum. 1549 West Grand Boulevard. The museum was there from 1965 to really about 87.
Wow.
Yes, a whole lot of activity took place there. When I think about all the things that took place there and the impact it had on the city, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. It was the first place Black artists could show their work. The museum had a small gallery, and Black artists started bringing their work, and folks were coming through, and that was part of the whole program. It wasn't the program because it was a history museum. But the early museums knew they had to really support all members of the community. So when you look closely at the early museums, they all had a piece for art, because we know the large white institutions were not looking at their art, our art.
Mm-hmm. All right. So how did that impact you, having that museum in your home?
Oh, we weren't there.
Okay.
Oh, we had moved, but it was so very weird. I remember saying at an event, I was shocked to walk back in my bedroom and see it converted into an exhibition space. And I've never forgotten that because I was like, but you know how you're going, now I kind of see what my father was up to? Because the whole house was converted. And his office, which was in the basement, this was his first office in Detroit, and it had a side entrance. That actually became the first Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad and the Middle Passage.
Oh, wow. So you had an Underground Railroad and Middle Passage in that house?
In the early days, yes.
Oh, my goodness. I didn't know that those types of exhibits existed there.
Oh, yeah. He was the forerunner of a lot of it in terms of the whole movement. And that's why he and Dr. Burroughs here really co-founded the association, which is the association for all the museums of African American history throughout the country, which now numbers about 200, 300.
And so you are on one of the committees for the association that your father started.
Right. The 50th anniversary of this association is coming up in 2 years, which is a huge deal. Mm-hmm. And a group of us got together and said, we really need to document the history of this association because it ties back to all the individual work the museums have been doing, for the past 50 years. So that's how this got started. And we're interviewing and pulling information together. So that's what that is. And we hope to have some kind of presentation at the 50th celebration, which is due to be in Detroit because that's where the founding meeting was held. Mm-hmm. In 1978, the Association of African American Museums incorporated in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
So lately, people have been really excited about what's happening in the museum in light of what's happening nationally with, the museums and the attack on Black history. What do you see on a national level, and how has it changed the Black Museum movement? How has that changed from the time it got started until now? What should we be looking at?
Oh, I think there's a need to come together more than ever before, and that's been happening at our yearly conferences because there's a need to just support each other. This current administration wiped out a whole agency that supported museums. Mm-hmm. So their museums right now are very vulnerable. And of course, the most vulnerable museums of African American history. I mean, we all know that. So these are difficult times, but people are supporting each other. People are standing up to, I wouldn't say individual attacks, but there have been some museums that have really lost a lot of funding just because they don't have alternative funding other than the government. And that's really been the key. If you have funding from other sources than the federal government, you will probably have a better chance of withstanding it. But the group together is very strong in saying, we know one of the main goals of this administration is to wipe out our history. We've understood it. It's been there. It's there and it will be there. And this is one more attack we have to withstand and keep on doing what we're doing. And that's collecting, preserving, and exhibiting our history because it is American history. And I'm glad we finally say that because for a long time we couldn't say that. Mm-hmm. And by the way, this year is the 100th year of Carter G. Woodson starting Negro History Week, which I'm glad to say is now a month. But if you're in the African American Museum movement, we use it as the kickoff month for a whole year because you should really celebrate our history 365 days out of the year, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you your age. I remember in second grade being really excited because I won the Black ribbon during Black History Week at my elementary school. Oratorical, I like to talk then too, so I got a Black ribbon. And, Black was the top ribbon, and then you had green and then red. And the amount of pride I had in second grade being a Black girl, getting my ribbon, really speaks to the importance of this type of history. Adults, we don't necessarily need it. But that whole week was just a celebration of Blackness. And, my mother was an artist. And so my sister won because my mother helped her draw a portrait of Frederick Douglass. But I won on my own merits, okay? I didn't need my mother's. It was like really competitive trying to figure out who's going to do, we went to the auditoriums. And so we do have to always honor Carter G. Woodson. Is that happening by the Museum Association? Is there any special recognition that you guys are helping to usher in, or, are you aware of that?
I think that museums, because we're a membership organization, that is a membership organization, they do it at their own level. Museums of African American history have been celebrating Black History Month forever. because Carter G. Woodson came before most of the museums of African American history. I see the museum group is extending what he did and expanding on it and making it full blown, because you also have the Association of Negro Life and History, but they're more the academicians, the scholars. The museums show, exhibit, educate.
Yeah, I'm really interested, though, in very specifically Carter G. Woodson and his role in some of this stuff, because a lot of young people don't know who he is. And I think it's important to elevate the fact that he played such an important role in the documenting and celebration of Black people and the Black life.
Oh, he did. He did. He founded the Association of Negro Life and History. I think he was the first PhD to graduate from Harvard in history. And interestingly enough, and I just recently found that out, the Association of Negro Life and History started here in Chicago. I did not know that. They have an association here. I just hadn't picked up on that. I saw something because they were celebrating the 100th. So it's very good to also celebrate anniversaries, because it reminds people of what you've accomplished. And I would, to have lived to see the museum, Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, turn 60 years old is breathtaking. Yeah. It's breathtaking. When I think of my father and my sister and I, he would say to us, let's go sell memberships. He'd take a folding table and 3 chairs, and we'd go sit out on Woodward. This was back in the day when you could just go out on Woodward and sell trinkets on a Sunday. You didn't need a permit. You didn't need anything. You could just go out and sell stuff. And we would sit there and sell memberships. And what struck me was, I was about 11 or 12. I looked around and everybody else was selling trinkets. And at that time, I realized my father was selling a vision. And how different that was. We weren't selling a bag of potato chips or anything. We were selling a membership to an organization that had not yet truly started. But his vision and his conversation with people was actually saying, I want to donate to this cause. And they would take out a membership right there.
And we're still doing it today.
Yes.
So what would you say to people who are new to the museum, Charles H. Wright Museum? There's so many people who are moving to Detroit. What is the significance that you see of this museum right now?
Oh, I think you have to continue the education, because in the schools, actually it's more crucial now than ever, because no one is teaching African American history anymore. I was surprised to find out Detroit School Board has no more money to bring the buses that used to come in the 70s and 80s and somewhat into the 90s to the museum.
What?
Yes, that has been cut out. I found that out last year when I was visiting the museum and talking to staff, because I was like, I don't see school buses anymore. Well, they don't have the money. The principal can sometimes do a fundraiser and bring kids, but I was so taken back. And I said, and I have been talking about this to at the ability I can, museums of African American history should take on teaching African American history. That should be a charge. One of the interesting things about my father was when he started the museum, he felt people should know African history. He held African history classes for people who were coming on board to work or be a volunteer at the museum as he was starting the museum. He collected several Black PhDs from Oakland University in the 60s, and they agreed to teach classes, and he gave out certificates. Yes, as a precursor to understand what you were getting into if you were going to work with this organization. Isn't that wild?
Yes, it is.
I'm loving your ability to recollect these stories and these moments.
Well, I want to, because I realize I'm one of the few people that's really a living witness to the history for the whole 60 years. I witnessed it from the beginning. Yeah, I was there, and I am still here, and it's an amazing feeling to see the impact the museum has had, not just locally, but also nationally, in terms of a place, because our history is so critical. And to get back to your question, Donna, people should be encouraged as new citizens to come in and join and keep the momentum going, because now more than ever, they are destroying our history. Now, I don't know if the Charles A. Wright wants to put a sign out in front, because that might be a little much, but this is what is going on.
Yeah.
And do we understand why?
That's a really good question.
Because they are threatened by our accomplishments in spite of all the trauma that we have suffered.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Go ahead.
I'm just thinking that after George Floyd, there were so many books on the New York Times best-selling book list that documented, how to be an anti-racist, white fragility. And, we have books like Black AF History, and there's so much scholarship that became part of the public domain. And I really think that there is a backlash to truth. That how do I continue seeing myself as this supreme being when people have used scholarship to break down all of the ways that my ancestors have done horrible things and the way that I do horrible things right now? You can't really justify white supremacy if you know the truth. So you got to take away the truth so that you continue justifying your position on top of the world. So I remember thinking, even as I was reading these books, I was on a board and they sent everybody, a copy of How to Be an Anti-Racist. You must read this book, and all the racist people on the board I was with really recoiled, right? Sort of like, and they told me, listen, this white man told me he did not feel safe around me. He didn't feel safe speaking his mind. And I was like, well, that's probably a good idea because you're not, because but I think that, it's hard, because children of these people, when I was in high school, I didn't have the privilege of going to Cass. I went to Mercy High School. And we had this class called Social Consciousness. And in social consciousness, we learned all about multinational corporations. And we learned about how Nestle was having these women use infant formula and they couldn't afford the infant formula and their breast milk had dried up and babies were dying or getting sick because they were using. And this girl went home and she screamed at her dad, how could you do this? Because you did that work for Nestle. You don't want your children to learn in school who you are. And so I think trying to turn back the clock is trying to preserve something that really cannot be preserved, because no matter how many Kid Rock shows you have, no matter how many 20 million people watch that, 125 watch Bad Bunny, okay? You can't put that back. You can't somehow maintain it, but there's this desire to hold on to something that in my mind is already lost. I don't think this is going to be a winning proposition. Our responsibility in the meantime is to keep knowledge alive for children who are being harmed, because if this doesn't last forever, I've got a she's 8-year-old granddaughter right now, and a grandson who's 2, a grandson who's 6 months old, he's almost 3. They are being raised in a world where truth is being actively, taken away. And again, I know that they're going to get to the other place. And if, raised by me and their parents and other people in our circle, they'll get a correct reading of history, but so many children won't, unless they have an opportunity to go to Charles Wright, and other museums that teach them truth. So it's good to know that. Somehow I was not aware, but, I know friends. I think that gives us something to advocate for at the community level, to make sure that we can take bus the kids there, especially at a time such as this. Because we know also that Detroit public schools used to have an African-American curriculum that they were incorporating into the classroom. I don't know the extent to which that's being done anymore. We used to have schools like Nataki Taliba and Insuroma Institute and others, Aisha Shule, that were really African-centered and very intentional about teaching their students that. And those opportunities are drying up, so the museum feels like it's more important now than just about ever.
Well, the whole education piece is so crucial, and I'm very proud of the Camp Africa that Charles H. Wright offers now, because that is a summer curriculum for students, as well as I think they're also offering it when the schools are like out of session for spring break. So that's a chance. But I mean, with everything going on at the current government level, you have to counter it with something almost equally forceful or not more forceful. And if you start children young, it gets incorporated into their life in terms of how they think about themselves. Because my father was very concerned about self-respect and self-resilience. Mm-hmm. He wanted all the babies he delivered to have that as well as a healthy body.
How many babies was that?
Close to 7,000 with his partner. With his partners. Let me set the record straight. He did not deliver them all by himself. He had two partners that actually enabled him to go and do ropes and talks and talk about the museum and get on a plane and fly ever. They were delivering the babies right along with him. But yes, his practice delivered 7,000 babies.
Where's his practice located?
It was located at 1549, the first museum, and then it moved to 50 Westminster, right off of Woodward, on the west side of Detroit, and it stayed there until he retired. And that was an interesting statement of his commitment to the community, too, because in the 70s, when you had more and more ladies on Medicaid, and those of us who were upwardly mobile were moving to the suburbs, mm-hmm. He had some of his friends left the community and went to the burbs. He stayed in the community till he retired. Till he retired. And some would argue he didn't make as much money as he could have, but he said that was not my issue. My issue was to stay and help the community and support the community.
So one more question about your dad. I've also heard about a role he played in helping to desegregate some of the hospitals in the city of Detroit.
Yeah. He was a civil rights fighter. When he came back to Detroit after he had gotten his, he was boarded in obstetrics and gynecology at Harlem. He went there for 3 years to finish that residency. That's where I was born. When he came back with me and my mother, he wanted to practice as an obstetrician gynecologist. Well, the practice in the hospitals was a Black doctor could admit their patient, but a white doctor had to deliver the patient. And they were different. The physicians in internal medicine had issues too. So a group of Black doctors came together and said, we will take on the specialties and desegregate the practice in these hospitals. So my father took on what is now Hutzel Hospital, was Women's Hospital. Mm-hmm. And he went to the head administrator and said, you know, we really should look at changing this. Just do it here. And she went. So he went to the senator of the state of Michigan, found out about the Hill-Burton Act, which was a federal bill that funded hospitals and gave them their money, but there was not supposed to be any discrimination. And over time, he developed a platform and went back in and told the woman, look, the senator's going to help me, and we're going to defund this hospital if you do not give us privileges to admit and deliver our patients. And that's what did it. And other doctors in Hutzel, other doctors in the city of Detroit kind of use the same platform. They found their power, and they exercised the politics necessary and made the change. And that, you know, that's what it's about, finding your power and coming together and making it work. It was a small band of doctors, and he was the lead for OB-GYN because that was his specialty.
What year was that?
Like 53.
Wow.
1953, 54, around in there.
Wow.
They were segregating. They, you know, Black patients went into some little unit somewhere and occasionally got care.
And that conversation still is one that we have today around Black maternal health.
I know. And he felt very strongly about teenage pregnancy. But that was part of the reason he stayed where he stayed, too, because even though he wasn't for it, he felt everyone should have a healthy prenatal experience and deliver a healthy baby, and then take the steps to help that situation so the child, you know, has a better opportunity. Wrote many papers on the need to support and really look at teenage pregnancy as something that requires community support.
Yeah. Well, life well lived. And so what do you do professionally? I know that you are on the, in what ways did you follow in your father's footsteps?
Well, the association work was definitely following him because I sort of watched him develop and work with the association. And then now that I'm not really working full time, I said, let me get back and do that. And then the other piece, I really had the opportunity to explore my mother's history. I don't know if you saw that on my resume, but I feel so lucky that I've got so much history on both sides of my family. My grandma told me and my sister when we were small about her story. She would take pictures out and show us the folks. Fast forward, she passes. I'm older. I have the energy. I said to my sister and my daughter, we need to go down to Mattoon, Illinois. Well, when we got there, the librarian was looking at us like, where have you been? And it was like, we were like, what are you talking about? This man ushered us down to the base of the library, started bringing out these books. Our family was on the front page of the Mattoon Gazette in the 1800s.
Wow.
Donna, my mouth fell open. I said, that was the sign. I have to do the exhibit. I have to do this exhibit. I mean, it was like, oh my God. So we, copied it and took it back and condensing the story. I decided to do an exhibit. I had contacts. I had a contact here as well as in Detroit, but the curator I knew from DuSable was the one that really helped me. And I put together my exhibit, Picture Perfect, Zealous Traveling Scrapbook. And it tells the story of how my great-great-grandparents came up through Tennessee, going towards Kankakee to get away from slavery, got off at a little gathering where their folks were. It wasn't incorporated anything. They found out that great-great-grandfather was a barber, and they asked him to stay. And like they say, after that, the rest is history. And it tells her story growing up in this town. And she went on to be the first person to graduate, black person to graduate from Eastern Illinois University. Mm. So look at all, and I was just discovering all this unknown history. So I took my exhibit back to Eastern. I made a contact and I took it there. They had a nice ceremony. And then they said, we are thinking about renaming a dorm and we want to honor Black people. And after a lot of politicking, and a woman on the school newspaper had found out about my grandmother too and was helping me because she supported it. They renamed one of their dorms. They wanted to get rid of Stephen Douglas. If you don't know who he was the anti-Lincoln person back in those days who wanted slavery, and Lincoln was politically against slavery. So they renamed the dorm Powell Norton. My grandmother's maiden name was Powell.
Wow.
All for bringing history. And then when I took it to Mattoon, where she grew up, and this really surprised me because I didn't know they were going to do this, and I had it in the library. They had a program, and the mayor gave me the key to the city.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, I tell people this story because I'm saying, don't think there isn't some reward out there for bringing your history. Mm-hmm. These were predominantly white people. I was dealing with folks, especially Mattoon, because Mattoon, I see why everybody left. And you have so much understanding of your family when you do that kind of digging too. Yeah. Because at one point in time, Black barbers were the king of the road back in the day. Black barbers, that's how they made their money. And that was what my great-great-grandfather and great-grandfather were. But to see this reaction, I've told people, I said, do your history, trace your history. You never know what you're going to find. And if you have the ability, and we all don't, to take it and share it, you don't know what may happen. Mm.
You know what? On that note, I'm actually writing a novel right now that is really trying to depict so much of Detroit history that is lost. And so I'm not really putting my family in there directly, but I'm drawing on their experiences because I think it's so important that we tell the stories. And, I teach a class about the history, but people don't read history books. So I'm making a novel. Hopefully somebody will read it. They don't read that either, right? But that's telling the story, carrying on the history books. My mother used to always say, please write a book about our family. But I love my family members. And so as long as some of them are still living, I'm probably going to keep some of those secrets. Because I want to see my stuff on stage.
No, you have to make that choice because, part of the problem with history is We all want to tell the good stories, and we want to tell some of the bad stories, but we don't have to beat up on ourselves.
Right. I mean, I'm telling you bad stories.
Fake.
I'm telling some stories now.
Okay.
There's some stories. I'm just not putting any names behind any of the stories. So,
That's another way to do it.
And there's composites. Yeah. Not just my stories, but the stories I've heard of people, so many people. In my line of work, I work with people from all walks of life. And that's the beautiful part about Detroit is the tapestry of all these different people make us who we are and really trying to celebrate. So it's really a love letter to Detroit in some ways, although other people may see it as, an indictment, but, they probably should. But the point is to tell stories and to keep our history alive. And I just want to honor you for doing that because you don't have to. And also I want to honor you for telling your mother's story. I'm a mama's girl. Okay. And a lot of times we celebrate men. I was talking about it with Kevin the other day. We know about Martin Luther King and we know what he thought. We know all this. We know so little about Coretta.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. We know about Malcolm X and we know who Betty Shabazz is, but we know so little about her, how she felt, what she was going through. And we know how brilliant women influence the men they're with. We know that Coretta helped shape everything he was. We know that Betty helped shape everything he was. And I know that your mother helped shape your father, played a big role.
The library, the library at the museum is named after Louise Lovery Wright.
Yeah.
And see, that's another area where we, the people in the museum world, have to do that. We're all very concerned about what's going to happen with all the papers that have already been saved. The current administration just as soon destroy the archives when you think about it. How do we preserve the papers that have already been saved? And how do we save future contributions and stories that people are collecting and they want to bring to your museum? So we are in a time that's going to require a lot of new thinking and I think just a different approach. But it's going to be challenging. But people have asked me occasionally, what would my father say? And I said, he would say, nobody ever told you the struggle was over. So take a deep breath and get ready to keep stepping. That would be him. That would be Dr. Burroughs too. That group was so salt of the earth. They didn't have time for luxury, but they were driven. They had the passion. We have to preserve our history, and I'll say at no matter what cost.
Yeah. Stephanie, we have a multi-generational group of folks here, this panel. I want to ask you now, you've talked a little bit about some of the ways that we can do it, but how can younger folks like me, like Brian, work right in stride with the older generation that might have the experiences, that might have the stories, that might have the artifacts physically, the photographs. What could we do, to continue on and help in preserving our own history for our next generation?
Right. And the technology is so much better than it was even when they were starting back in the 60s. I think with some of your grandparents, you have to get them comfortable talking first because people are still kind of hesitant. And that was always a struggle in the past. People did not want to talk about their history. But they started, and now we're getting over that hump. So I think with individual families, you have to sense who is the true storyteller, and is that they're a good storyteller or they know their history too. And that's sometimes hard to find because people can tell some stories. But let's face it, you don't want to record a lot of, I won't say false information, but not information worth capturing. You know what I'm saying? But when you find that person, I mean, it's so much easier now to videotape. You don't have to be there with them. You can store it. I think you can convert things to written documents now a lot easier too. So in that way, it's a lot easier to save family affairs than it was in the past 20 or 30 years. And I know most people can do what I did. I could do an exhibit because of my family background, and I knew what to do and how to do it. But if I hadn't had the background, would I have still done something? Yes. I think I would have figured out how to preserve what I had, and maybe even do a PowerPoint. Not that hard. Do a PowerPoint and send it to all the family members.
All right.
You've done your job. If you say, this is what I have, this is a story, you got some photos and you put it in there, that's a story, right?
Yeah.
family.
I can say that my sister, when we were young, videotaped both of my grandmothers. And it was amazing. She had a friend who had a video camera. This is before everybody had one on their phone. And she came and she did it. And it went on a VHS tape. And then the VHS tape broke. And
Right.
so, now we actually have the ability to not just capture it, but then put it somewhere where it is preserved.
Right.
If I could, when my mom was hospitalized, my sister and I took our phones and we had her tell stories. And so then I couldn't listen to it. I still haven't listened to the whole thing. I was not able to, but I sent it to my sister so she could put it together. And at some point, I'll be able to sit through it without, I told you I'm a mama's girl. So, but yeah, I think that documenting is important. Use tools you have, but the videotaping is really important because you get to see the faces and you get to hear the words. And the stories that you don't know you're going to miss, you're going to miss them. There's so many things I want to ask, and there's nobody to ask anymore. So I encourage Sam and Brian to do the ask now, to document it now, so that when, and you have something to give to your kids.
And ask your friends. I still find that history is an uncomfortable subject for people. And I think the difference is my father wanted everybody, in particular Black people, to have a love of history in your DNA. He wanted it to be a part of who you are, so it comes naturally. And he didn't want you spouting off facts and figures about when Frederick Douglass was born, nothing like that. He wanted you to have an idea of who Frederick Douglass was, but he wanted you more to gain the richness of the struggle and say, if they can do it, so can I. That's what he has always wanted for people to take away, and young people, because that's your reserve. That's your energy packet, in times of day.
Sorry, I'm going to relate that to Brian. We started with you talking about the play.
Yes.
And thinking of MLK as this God, right? He was a man. And he was a man. I was trying to tell young people, he didn't know his stuff was going to succeed until after it did.
Exactly.
It was not behind him, right? He had a whole lot of naysayers.
Yes.
So I think a lot of times it makes it hard for us to see ourselves in heroes, because by the time we know them, they're heroes.
Yes.
We don't ever encounter them when they're not being heroic. And so I think that may be another piece of importance for young people to look and say, wait a minute, I sometimes do some of these things myself, and I can still see the difference. I don't have to wait until I get perfect.
Right.
Well, let's take another quick break, guys. At the top side of this, we're going to come back, close it out. I want to remind you guys, because of the application that we're streaming on, you don't have to sit by your computer or anything. Just don't close out the tab right away until you see on your screen like successful upload. Our producer has to just upload the audios with our video from here. So if you could just keep once we end your tab open. Afterward, it'll usually take like 15 to 20 minutes, but you don't have to be by your computer or anything. I'm pretty sure you can like close it out, but just don't close the window.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we're going to do shout outs. We do at the end of our show every week. Just shout out anyone or anything even that you guys feel deserves attention in your lives this week.
Okay.
I'm going to shout out the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, well, I did that last week, so you can't steal my thing again.
My shout out is different.
All right, here we go.
The Detroit Pistons, because our staff team went to see them on Thursday, and they lost to the lowly Washington Wizards.
They did, the worst team in the league. They did.
They managed to lose while we were there, and then win by a much larger margin the next day against the Knicks. So, thank you for letting us know what it's like to see you lose. It was good.
All right, we're gonna come back. We're gonna come back.
Well, we did the next day. The next day, definitely.
We'll be okay.
Well, I know.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. We want to thank Stephanie Wright Griggs, Brian Taylor Sullivan for joining us today on our episode of Authentically Detroit. If you guys have topics, guests you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can hit us up on our socials at Authentically Detroit on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or you can visit our website, authenticallydet.com. All right, now it is time. Each week we shout out. We do shout outs. People in our lives, things in our life that's bringing us joy. This week, what is bringing me joy? You know what? My cat, Paula. I got to say, she has been using the litter box correctly. There was a scare. We had a Paula scare. I took her to the vet. I said, why is she pooping on our couch? Why does she do this? She gave her a little medicine, and it's gone away. The girl hasn't pooped on the couch in about a month now. So we're going to keep cheering for Paula. She's a year old, so it's kind of old to be doing that still. She uses the litter box regularly, but sometimes she makes mistakes. I want to say shout out to you, Paula the cat, my emotional support cat. Not really, but when I got laid off a couple years ago, I went out and all of a sudden there was a cat outside my house. I said, come on in. And it just felt like a sign. So I want to say thank you, Paula the cat, for bringing me joy this week. It's cold, so I've been snuggled up and inside all week.
Do just jump in with the shout outs? Is that
yeah, go ahead.
Shout out. I'm going to shout out Ebony Taylor. Good job. She's running a good race. She's doing what needs to be done and representing and organizing at the community level. I love to see the new energy of all of our new young politicians in the city of Detroit. Shout out to Stephanie for joining the ranks.
I'll give a shout out to my wonderful castmate, Rebecca Rose Mims, who plays Kamei in the play The Mountaintop at Detroit Public Theater that everybody should see before March 8th. Get your tickets now.
I want to give a shout out to all the people in the city of Detroit that made 60 years of the Charles H. Wright Museum possible. I also want to shout out to all the people, and this is such a positive sign of more and more folks coming to the museum for family reunions. I think that is one of the most appropriate things and happy things I've seen when I visit and walk in and someone says, oh, that's a family reunion in there. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
That's beautiful.
People together at the museum. They have programs. They'll sometimes ask staff to come in and talk or give a tour or not. You don't have to do that. And, my final shout out is times are kind of rough now, but do not forget the significance of our history and find a way to keep it going, because this too shall pass.
Stephanie, where should folks go if they're trying to learn more about your efforts and your organization?
The Association of African American Museums does have a website. I think it's .org, AAAM.org. And I'm also happy to say, since we're shouting out, I'd forgotten about it. I was fortunate enough to already in my current project, recording the history of the association, we have a history of the association, a brief documentary on the website that I helped produce.
Well, all right. Brian, where can folks find you on social media?
They can find me on Instagram at Brian Sullivan Taylor or online at DetroitDramaStudio.com.
All right. And as always, you can find me, Sam Robinson, on Twitter at Samuel J. Rob. Donna, where can they find you? They can find you at ECN any day of the week. Huh? All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Authentically Detroit. We will hear from you guys next week. Thank you so much.